My name is Morgan Thorne. I am 36 years old. This morning, Julian Drake stepped off his hydrofoil at Emerald Bay Marina, snapped his fingers at me for his luggage, and called me Clipboard Girl. I said nothing. I wrote down the acoustic reading on my gauge, 110 decibels, 25 over the legal limit, and I watched him walk into the building. What Julian didn't know was that the building he walked into was mine. The dock he docked at was mine. The maritime rights to every square foot of Emerald Bay, mine. Purchased quietly 4 years ago, with the settlement money his previous company paid me to stay silent about my husband's death. He had handed me the weapon himself. He just didn't know I had been aiming it ever since. Before I tell you what happened next, please hit like and subscribe. Drop your city and local time below. I love knowing where you're listening from. Now let me take you back 4 years to a hospital corridor that smelled like antiseptic and diesel fuel, when a lawyer handed me a check and called it closure. My husband Arthur was an underwater rescue specialist. He smelled like salt water and neoprene when he came home from a dive, a specific combination I could recognize before he reached the top of the stairs. His dive gear hung on a rack by the back door, always organized, always checked twice before he left in the morning. The kitchen table had a permanent ring where he set his coffee mug every day before the 5 a.m. drives to the bay. He was meticulous in the way that people become meticulous when their work means someone lives or dies. One morning, 4 years ago, his telemetry system failed at depth, not because he had made an error, because Julian Drake's previous tech firm had pushed an unverified software update to market 6 weeks ahead of safety certification to meet a quarterly earnings target. Arthur was 39 years old. The settlement came quickly, a number with enough zeros to suggest they understood the weight of what had happened and enough conditions attached to confirm they understood nothing of the kind. I signed nothing that day. I told the lawyer I needed time. I spent that time differently than they expected. Arthur had told me something once, sitting at that kitchen table with his coffee mug leaving its ring on the wood. The ocean doesn't care about your schedule, he said. It only cares whether you prepared. I was 32. I thought he was talking about diving. He was talking about everything that matters. I thought about that sentence every day for the next 4 years while I built what I built, while I waited for the moment I was waiting for. Julian Drake had expanded into maritime development. He had leased dock space, berth rights, and operational facilities at Emerald Bay, the same bay where Arthur worked, where Arthur dove, where Arthur did not come home from. I signed the settlement. Then I used every dollar of it. The acquisition took 14 months. I did not buy the marina directly. I built a network of anonymous holding entities, each one acquiring a piece of the underlying real estate, the land beneath the docks, the maritime rights, the berth agreements, the coastal access easements, until the master title sat, quietly and completely, in an entity I controlled from a penthouse office across the city. Nexus Automation, Julian's company, had been paying rent in various forms to various entities for 2 years before they understood that all of those entities had the same beneficial owner, me. I took the dock operations job because I needed to know the facility from the inside, not as the owner, as the person everyone overlooks, the one with the clipboard and the waterproof boots and the acoustic gauge. I watched Julian operate for 3 months before I saw him clearly. He did not learn names. He did not read safety protocols. He overrode automated systems because they slowed him down. He treated every regulation as an inconvenience designed specifically to obstruct him. One afternoon, I overheard him on his phone near the restricted berth area, speaking to his assistant. "The harbor authority runs on whoever controls the leases," he said, "and we control the leases. So the harbor authority works for us." That's the word they use for everything that used to be law. Control leverage works for us. As if federal maritime safety codes were simply a negotiating position. I said nothing. I wrote down the time, the location, and the exact words I texted Marcus, my maritime attorney. 2 words that evening: start building. And across the marina, Julian went to sleep that night, certain that Emerald Bay was his operational territory. It had not been for 14 months. Marcus had been building the file for 2 years before I gave him the instruction to move. Historical wave resonance data, acoustic displacement readings going back 18 months, vessel approach logs, radio check records showing missed safety confirmations on 14 separate occasions, environmental compliance audits on the coral sanctuary. Julian's chartered cruiser had violated to save 2 minutes on an approach. The file was methodical, time-stamped, built on publicly available regulatory data that Nexus Automation had apparently never imagined anyone would compile. The breakthrough came on a Friday morning during a gale warning. Harbor lockdown signal had been active for 40 minutes. Every non-emergency vessel had been recalled or held. The warning beacons were flashing at every approach point. Julian ordered his captain to dock anyway. I stood on the pier with my gauge and watched the cruiser slam against the reinforced pylons while the captain fought a surge that should have kept that vessel in open water. Later, when I confirmed with the captain privately that Julian had ordered him to override the
automated depth sounders to navigate 60 feet below safe parameters in active surge conditions, I had what I needed. Have you ever had to watch someone do something dangerous and stay completely still because moving too early would have cost you everything? Tell me in the comments. I read them. That afternoon, Julian's assistant Derek attempted to evict a marine biology startup from the lower docks to clear space for a private amenity build-out.
I let him get as far as the lobby, then I flipped over my identification badge. Derek looked at the corporate seal, then at my name, then back at the seal. Morgan Thorne, sole owner, principal investor, master real estate trust. The color left his face before he finished reading. I told him to leave the marine biology startup exactly where they were. Then I walked back to my office and called Marcus. "We're ready," I said. That evening, Julian hosted a dinner downtown for his international investors, describing Emerald Bay as the cornerstone of his next expansion phase. He had no idea what was already filed. Marcus laid out the sequence with precise clarity. The acoustic violations alone were sufficient for significant regulatory penalties. Combined with the documented coral sanctuary incursion, the emergency lockdown override, and the captain's confirmed account of the depth sounder manipulation, we had enough for a federal maritime safety referral. The physical assault on the captain, captured on the dock cameras my security team had installed, elevated the matter to federal criminal territory entirely. The lease termination triggers automatically under the catastrophic breach clause, Marcus said. Once the federal suspension order hits, the clause activates. There's no cure period, no negotiation window. It's over in a single document. And if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button, because this is where it ends for him. 2 days before the Monday investor presentation, Julian called the marina operations line. He asked to speak to whoever managed dock scheduling. He wanted to discuss expanding the relationship, more berths, longer lease terms, premium access agreements. He's put me on the line. I listened to 3 minutes of terms and incentives. "I'll think about it," I said. That night I drove to the bay alone. I parked where I could see the water. The lights from the dock reflected on the surface in long, broken lines, shifting with each small wave. Arthur used to say, "The ocean only cares whether you prepared." I almost wanted to tell Julian everything, to watch the realization move across his face before Monday. I cried that night, not from grief, from the particular weight of 4 years finally reaching their last evening. I wish this were different. I wish Arthur had been diving with equipment that someone had taken the time to certify. I wish Julian's previous company had chosen caution over a quarterly target. But wishes don't hold up on open water, preparation does. It was 11:50 p.m. when Marcus called. "The federal suspension order is signed," he said. "It hits Nexus Automation's corporate inbox at alle 9 do Monday morning, 6 minutes after the investor presentation begins." I asked if the maritime safety director had everything he needed. Everything. The footage, the acoustic logs, the captain's signed statement, the depth sounder override confirmation. He called it the most complete voluntary submission he's received in 20 years. I sat at my desk with the encrypted deed on the screen in front of me. Section 9. Regulatory discretion over all vessel berths. Master title, maritime rights. Arthur's coffee mug was on the corner of the desk. I had brought it from home the week I started the dock operations job. I had never told anyone whose it was. The clock showed 12:03 a.m. I am 36 years old. I am the owner of Emerald Bay Marina and every structure, berth, and easement within it. And across the city, in a hotel suite with a view of the bay, Julian Drake was reviewing his investor presentation. Slide 14. Emerald Bay Expansion Phase 3, with projected lease values and berth capacity numbers for a facility he would not control by the time the presentation reached slide 15. He'll find that out in about 9 hours. Julian stormed into the marina lobby at 9:47 a.m. His presentation had been running for 45 minutes when the suspension order arrived. His lawyers had spent the remaining time confirming that it was real, that there was no procedural error, that the Federal Maritime Authority had indeed issued an emergency operational suspension effective immediately. He was demanding to speak to the building's owner. I was standing by the glass entrance. He looked at me the way he always had, the woman with the clipboard, the gauge, the waterproof boots. The one he had called Clipboard Girl 24 hours earlier. Then he looked at the federal marshals stepping out from the security office, then back at me. I leaned in quietly. "Your lease terminated 40 minutes ago," I said. "Catastrophic breach clause. There's no cure, period." He said nothing. For the first time since I had watched him step off that hydrofoil, Julian Drake had nothing to say. I walked past him toward the glass doors. Outside, the bay was quiet. The water moved in small, unhurried waves, the way it does when nothing is disturbing it. I did not look back. Arthur used to say the ocean doesn't care about your schedule. It only cares whether you prepared. I always thought he meant conditions, tides, weather, windows. He meant something larger. He meant the work you do before the moment arrives is the only thing that determines what happens when the moment comes. Julian Drake faced federal maritime charges. The investor presentation was the last one Nexus Automation gave at Emerald Bay. Marcus still handles the marina's legal affairs. He told me once that the case file we submitted was the cleanest he had ever seen, not because I was angry, but because I had been precise. As for me, I still work the early morning dock shifts sometimes, not because I have to, because the bay at 5 a.m. smells like salt water and cold air and the specific quiet that belongs to a place that has been treated carefully. Arthur's coffee mug is still on my desk. I think about him every time I check an acoustic reading and the numbers come back clean, and I think he was right. The ocean doesn't care about your schedule. It only cares whether you prepared. If you have ever had to prepare quietly for a very long time, with no one watching, and then waited for the moment to arrive, I want to hear your story. Tell me in the comments. And if this story moved you, subscribe. There are more to come.